Interpreting ER diagrams. What is this? This is an ER or entity relationship diagram. This diagram depicts a business similar to Lowe's that sells housewares, also referred to as HW, appliances referred to as AP, and sporting goods referred to as SG. What does it do? It shows the entities in a database and their relationship. It can be created or it can be interpreted. Later in the course, we will learn how to create one. In this presentation, you will learn how to interpret one. What is an entity? An entity is a person, place, thing, event, or transaction that a company needs to store data about or track. Entities become the tables in the database that store the data. What is a relationship? The way in which the entities connect. There are three basic relationships: one-to-one, one-to-many, and many-to-many. We will explore all three in this course, but in this presentation we will explore one-to-many and many-to-many. How many entities are in this database? There are 5 entities. Each rectangle is an entity. The name displays above the rectangle. Rep, customer, part, orders, and order line are the entities. Attributes, also known as columns, also display for each entity below the line. What is a primary key? A column in an entity or a table that contains a unique value for each record. For example, your student ID uniquely identifies you in the student table in the CCBC database. A combination of columns can also be the primary key. A primary key cannot contain a null, meaning blank value. Note: access refers to the following: a column as a field, a row as a record. How is the primary key indicated? It is written above the line within each entity. For the rep entity, the rep number is the primary key. For the customer entity, the customer number is the primary key. For the part entity, the part number is the primary key. For the orders entity, the order number is the primary key. For the order line entity, the order number and the part number combined make up the primary key. Why? Because both the order number and part number are needed to make a record or row unique in this entity. For example, order number 123 could have 2 parts associated with it. There's going to be a row or a record for each of those part numbers. So, order number 123, part number ABC. Then there will be another record, order number 123, part number DEF. The fact that the order number and part number combination combined make this a primary key, we can have a unique occurrence of each item that is on the order. How are relationships indicated? Lines and the type of entities and business rules are ways that relationships are indicated. You will see in this diagram there are dashed lines versus solid lines. We'll explain why that is a little later. There are rectangles versus rounded rectangles. We'll explain why that is later. And business rules, how a business operates, also determine the relationships in the database. What is a one-to-many relationship? The primary key column in an entity can appear in 0, 1, or many records in a related entity that contains the same column. In the related entity, the common column cannot by itself be the primary key. The dot at the end of the line indicates the many side of the relationship. Which entities have a one-to-many relationship? Hint, there are 4. The rep and customer have a one-to-many relationship. The rep number is the primary key in the rep entity. The rep number appears in the related customer entity. It is not the primary key in the customer entity. It is a foreign key. Customers and orders have a one-to-many relationship. Customer number is the primary key in the customer entity. Customer number appears in the related orders entity. It is not the primary key in the orders entity. It is a foreign key. Part and order line have a one-to-many relationship. Part number is the primary key in the part entity. Part number appears in the related order line entity. It is not by itself the primary key. It is a foreign key. Orders and order line. Order number is the primary key in the orders table. Order number appears in the related order line entity. It is not by itself the primary key. It is also a foreign key. In the order line entity, the primary key is a combination of the order number and the part number. Therefore, in this instance, the order number and part number are both foreign keys, and in combination, they are also the primary key. What is a foreign key? It is the common field that is in the related entity of a relationship. It does not have to have the same name. A little later on in the course, we'll see some diagrams where foreign keys do not have the same name, but they do have the same data type and size as the common field in the other entity. Which entities contain foreign keys? Customer entity. The foreign key is the rep number. Orders entity. The foreign key is the customer number. Order line entity. The foreign key is the order number and the part number. Normally, the ER diagram will indicate foreign keys as parentheses FK parentheses. I have turned this off for this example, but from this point on in the presentation, you will see the foreign key indicated. What is a many-to-many relationship? It is a logical connection between two entities that need a way to be tracked. There are no lines to indicate this type of relationship. It is based on the business rules, how the company operates. Many-to-many relationships must be broken down into one-to-many relationships in order to retrieve information from the database. Which entities have a many-to-many relationship? There are two entities that have a many-to-many relationship, and it really is based on the business rule. Parts and orders. A part will appear on many orders. Orders will contain many parts. One of the business rules for this company is to sell products, and those products are uniquely identified by part numbers. An entity is needed to track this connection, the fact that a part will appear on many orders and orders will contain many parts. Which entity tracks the following? A part will appear on many orders. Orders will contain many parts. The order line entity tracks these. The order line is a special kind of entity. It's called a composite entity. What is a composite entity? An entity that tracks the details of the many-to-many relationship. Each entity in the many-to-many relationship has a one-to-many relationship with the composite entity. Part has a one-to-many relationship with order line. Orders has a one-to-many relationship with order line. Notice that the rounded rectangle and solid lines between the composite entity and the two related entities. This is because the primary key in the composite entity is composed of the primary keys from the two entities related to this entity, part and orders. The order number is coming from the orders table, and the part number is the same as the part number in the part table. Once you have a composite entity, now as a user I can determine which part numbers were included in orders and which orders contained which part numbers. Let's do a quick check to see how well you've mastered the material. This is a different ER diagram. It's for a bookstore similar to Barnes & Noble, and they sell books and they have many different branches. What columns are primary keys? In the publisher entity, the publisher code. In the book entity, the book code. In the author entity, the author number. In the branch entity, the branch number. In the rote entity, book code and author number. In the inventory entity, book code and branch number. What entities have foreign keys? The book entity, the rote entity, the inventory entity. The foreign key in the book entity is the publisher code. The foreign key in the rote entity is book code and author number. The foreign key in the inventory entity is book code and branch number. Which entities have a one-to-many relationship? Notice I'm using 1:N as a short abbreviation for one-to-many. The publisher has a one-to-many relationship with the book entity. The author entity has a one-to-many relationship with the rote entity. The book entity has a one-to-many relationship with the inventory entity. The book entity has a one-to-many relationship with the rote entity. The branch entity has a one-to-many relationship with the inventory entity. Which entities have a many-to-many relationship? Author and book have a many-to-many relationship. An author can write many books. A book can be written by multiple authors. Branch and book have a many-to-many relationship. A branch can carry many books. Books can be carried by multiple branches. Which entities convert many-to-many relationships to one-to-many relationships? Hint: these entities will allow the database to track the specifics about the many-to-many relationships. For the author and book relationship, the wrote entity converts the many-to-many to one-to-many relationships. Therefore, there is a one-to-many relationship between author and the wrote entity. There is a one-to-many relationship between the book and the wrote entity. For the branch and book many-to-many relationship, the inventory entity converts that relationship to a one-to-many. Therefore, there is a one-to-many relationship between branch and inventory, and there is a one-to-many relationship between book and inventory. We can now determine the following: which author wrote which books, and which books were written by which authors. Which branch carries which book, and which books are carried by which branch. Answer the following. What does the dot mean at the end of the lines? Means the many side of the one-to-many relationship. Why are the lines connected to the wrote and inventory entities solid? The primary key in these entities is composed of primary keys from the related entities. Why do the wrote and inventory entities have rounded corners? The primary key is composed of primary keys from the related entities. What type of entity is wrote and inventory? It is a composite entity. In a one-to-many relationship, how many related records can be in related entities? 0, 1, or many. Let's look at an example of a 0 related record. If Henry Books has just made arrangements with the new publisher, and the publisher has not published any books, or they haven't shipped them any books to sell, there is not going to be a publisher code for that publisher in the book table at that point. Now, once books start coming in from that publisher, then there will be related records in the book table. A case where there might be one, or there must be one, is in the wrote table, the relationship between author and wrote. If a book is written, it must have an author, so there would have to be an author number in the wrote table. Great job.